0010, or check out the website at www.thomasmariachi.com. Now we have Dr. Shield here. Now Albert says he's already taken, is it right?
That's right.
He's taken shots. And we have Peter here. Now Peter, first we want to get into you've done a lot of things in your life, but the Shroud of Turin is very interesting for a lot of folks to understand. Exactly, tell the folks, first of all, I was looking at your website and they said there's a duplicate Republic Plus from Las Vegas, but they sold it or something.
No, it actually got vandalized. It was being stored in St. Louis.
Okay.
And some vandals broke into the warehouse, set the warehouse on fire,
Wow.
and the exhibit was completely destroyed about a week before we were due to move it to Vegas.
Oh, wow,
That was a tragedy.
that's tragic for Las Vegas. But tell the folks, your research on this, is it real or is it fake?
Well, I've been involved in the research into the authenticity of the shroud for something like 20-odd years now. I first got involved in a similar capacity to your good self. I had a radio program on Radio 2CH in Sydney, Australia, and my producer, and by the way, I want to say a big hi to this great guy you've got operating for you here.
You're a great engineer.
He and I go back a long way together.
Oh, okay. Did you give him a date too?
Absolutely. He
doesn't need you.
I go to him.
Oh, you go to him? Wow.
That's where I got the advice to write the book.
Hey, that's pretty damn good.
But back in 1988, I was on air, and my producer came to me and said, look, there's some phenomenal information available on the Shroud of Turin. A group of Americans called the STURP group, S-T-U-R-P, had been to Athens, I beg your pardon, to Turin in Italy, and had done a very extensive study into the so-called authenticity of this amazing piece of cloth that many people believe actually was the shroud in which Jesus Christ was wrapped at the time of the crucifixion and resurrection. The purpose of the STURP group and the work that I've been involved in over the years is not to determine whether or not it was Christ's burial shroud. We'll never prove that. The investigative study was basically to find out what caused the image on the shroud. The amazing property of the images is that it's in reverse. It's a negative of a man, 6 foot tall, naked, with wounds identical to those recounted in the biblical accounts of the crucifixion, in every sense of the word. And so for, well, many, many years now, the scientists of the world have focused on trying to identify how this miraculous image in reverse got on the shroud.
What's your opinion?
Well, we don't know. My program, of course, my television series and my radio shows were called The World of Unexplained Mysteries, and I'm always amused when people come up to me and say, oh, Peter, you're talking about the Shroud of Turin. Well, it wouldn't be on my program if it was an explained mystery. The shroud is still unexplained. We have no real proof one way or the other. In 1988, the shroud was subjected to carbon dating, which was supposedly to have shown that the shroud dated back to around about the 14th century, which would be about the same time that Leonardo da Vinci was supposed to have painted a replica of the shroud. In my book, In the Image of His God, for example, which was published last year at the International Convention of the Shroud, I look at the scenario where the shroud was smuggled out of Italy and hidden on the little island of Malta, because many people couldn't understand why, when the carbon dating was done after so much research, that in actual fact, the carbon dating showed it to be a 14th century plot. So all research into the Shroud of Turin stopped about 20 years ago.
Now let me say something here, because with unexplained mysteries, I'm in the world of paranormal. Okay? Now, a lot of people can ask you astigmatism with their hands if they really believe that they have wounds of Jesus Christ, that blood can come out. Don't you think somebody who deals with a world of psychic phenomena, or maybe a yogi master, could have done the same thing, put that on a cloth, it may not have been Jesus Christ's image?
Well, that of course is a reasonable argument. However, if you listen to the scientific investigation that was done by some of the most esteemed scientists in the United States, particularly Dr. Alan Adler, who, for example, did the blood analysis on the shroud. If we'd had time, I would have loved to have played you the interview with Alan. But Alan makes it very clear that the blood on the shroud is in two forms. There is blood which is easily identifiable as blood that has been shed by a living person.
Okay.
In other words, while suspended on the cross but still alive. In one location only, in the side, where the wound, where the spear was supposedly stabbed into Christ's side to attest to whether or not he was alive, the blood that is congealed there on the shroud is actually blood from a deceased person. Now, for a forger to have gone to that degree of detail, to have been able to bring pollen from plants that are only found in the Jerusalem area onto the cloth, make it virtually impossible for it to have been an artwork or a forgery.
Okay. Well, anything's possible because I find that today's society forgery, they go way out of their way just to, they have all the time on their hands. So it's possible that it could have been somebody that's playing messing around today at the time all the time on their hand back then. But I understand what you're saying, and I probably would agree with what you're saying.
Well, as Alan Adler points out, the unfortunate thing is there is no evidence for authenticity.
Right.
There is evidence for disauthenticity. We can't prove something's authentic. We can prove it's disauthentic.
Right. No, what's interesting, and they always know, I have a paranormal thing in case you want to check it out here in Las Vegas. I was in Chicago, Lincoln Park Zoo, I took a picture of the gorillas. And guess what appeared? The shroud was turned. The gorillas took off, and the shroud was turned appeared. So I'm not sure the gorillas are a whole year off. What do you think?
That's something unexplained.
Maybe we should find Elvis.
We need to find it. That's possible.
Who knows in that area? And we're getting a lot of phone calls, but let's go to Dr. Shield here. You also read other books, such as Senior Dating. Why don't you tell the folks more about that?
Okay. Well, just before we leave the shroud, I brought in a copy of the interviews that were done with the Stirp group. It sells online for $45.
Okay.
I'd like to give you that to give away to any one of your listeners or anyone who calls in if you want to run a competition at some stage.
Okay. And the price on this thing would be normally?
Well, if you buy it through Shroud.com, which is the principal Shroud site, not my site, it's something like $45.
Oh, okay.
On my site, it comes free if you buy a copy, of course, of the book, which is called In the Image of the Star. So
now, basically, why don't you give out your website so folks that they can pick it up?
well, you can put Dr. Shield or PJ Shield into any web browser, and it'll take you to any number of my sites. I have 13 websites, and pjshield.com is probably the principal one, and the one that you would best be served by.
Okay. We have people calling on the line, but we're going to wait until we get one more commercial before we take the individuals here. So the line's burning up, or burning low for Elvis Presley, huh? Okay. So, but the main factor is you do have other books. Mention the other books before we go to a commercial.
Right. Well, that's the Senior's Guide to Dating Younger Partners. It was written primarily as a result of the fact that when I reached wife number 6, and I'm very delighted to tell you that I just recently married wife number 7.
Wow.
All of whom have been 20 to 30 years my junior.
Oh, wow. I got to get that book.
I was prompted by a colleague to write the book, and it really deals with the problems faced with loneliness in old age. How do you find a suitable companion as you move into your senior years? The conventional dating channels aren't exactly lying out there for you.
Well, all I can tell you, Doc, is this. I'm 56-year-old. I may not look like 56. Maybe I should be dying my hair.
It's okay. I'll my age.
And the idea is a lot of the older females, they just don't have them. They peter out. So would you recommend me go find a 20-year-old or what?
Have you heard of the Fifth Amendment?
You should have it, folks. That's not right. It's not fair. Okay. But anyways, this book again was how much?
It sells for $13.99. It's on, again, if you go to pjshield.com, you'll